Welcome back, everyone, to the first podcast. Today we're here with a special guest, and this episode is kind of a special one. We're not diving into the product as much, but more exploring the people behind it. Joining me here today, we have Sebastian, the CEO and co-founder of Spring. So, to give a bit of context, Spring is one of the leading infrastructure and fundraising providers in Web3 today. We raised almost $500 million across over 200 VC groups and have over 200,000 investors using our product. So that's kind of exciting. Now we're building the first ever private market DEX. So exciting times. For the people following Sebastian on X, you've probably seen that he's passionate about designing first and a true builder. So it's going to be exciting exploring more his background and where he comes from and learning more about Sebastian. Welcome, Seb. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. I'm very much looking forward to having the conversation and letting people get a taste of my life and my childhood.
That's nice. It's cool to get a bit of background. Like everyone can see what you're designing and what's in front of them, but not many have heard your story. So that's exciting. To just start things off, would you mind explain more about your childhood, where you grew up, your passion as a kid?
Sure. I think to give kind of a brief context on where I am now, and then I'll dive into kind of the past, and then you let me know what's exciting and what's not exciting, is currently we're working on First. First is, among other things, the DEX, but I think it's also the protocol that we're building, right? I think the goal is, how do we turn things that are illiquid into something that's liquid? And then the DEX is one of the products that we have in that protocol, but then we also have, the mirror token, we have the token delivery commitment, all of these things that we're very excited about. And then briefly about kind of me and what I've done the last couple of years is we've been working on Spring. Spring has been in business for 4 years, and it's really gone from $0 kind of facilitated to $400 million in 4 years. And I think we established ourselves as hopefully the number one kind of choice and investment platform in crypto. So that's where we're at now. And then, I do think very few people know about my past. I think mostly on X, when people follow me there, I share updates about kind of what we're working on or what's going on in the future. But Sebastian as a kid and going back, I think I am a guy who's very competitive. I started very early being a guy that's just obsessed with competition. I think that's been a big part of my family as well. I think kind of the mentality in the family was always to never let kids win, which means I grew up in a family where I didn't win anything until I was like 10, because even if you're playing Monopoly or if you're playing anything, kids are not allowed to get a free win. So you're just getting beaten by the adults for 10 years, and that drives the competitive instinct, I think. So my childhood was a lot of sports, a lot of like football, handball. I played chess. I did professional gaming, really just about competing and trying to win.
It's interesting you say professional gaming. Would you mind dive into like what you were doing, what you played, how that came about?
Yeah. I think my obsession with computers came somewhat early. I looked through kind of like the childhood photos of me, and I feel like in a lot of them, there's always like me with a laptop, either trying to do, be it like coding or be it gaming or something like this. I got into professional gaming by chance or by really pursuing and trying to get good at Call of Duty 4. So I played Call of Duty 4 on computer, and I played this concept called Pro Mod, which is what the competitive players play. And then I just got good at it. And then I think when I was probably like 14, 15, we got sponsored, and I started playing in a professional team, which was exciting. It was basically kind of doing a lot of schoolwork and trying to do okay in school or passing school, and then also going home and just practicing for hours. I think back then playing like competitive computer games was not a thing. Now it's like a huge thing, and like you can earn millions of dollars. But back then we were few, and the prize pool was little, but it was still a lot of fun. So
that's nice, and it's cool to hear like you have all of these different passions, like chess, gaming. What like motivates you with all of these kind of hobbies you had early on?
yeah, good question. I think from a motivational standpoint, competition is the honest answer of what drives me a lot. Is I do think I have a personality that very easily gets obsessed with something. Like I really enjoy focusing in on one thing, studying it, trying to become really good at it, and then I'm fine with kind of leaving everything behind. So that can be like if I'm pursuing something that I'm passionate about, I'm completely willing to just leave and forget everything around me, be it a relationship I'm in, be it friends, be it school, be it anything, and then I just pursue that as much as I can, and then I just try to learn how to become good at something. And then I think the process of going from like zero, not knowing anything, to becoming good at something is something I like a lot. I feel like it's extremely rewarding. And I think I also enjoy the grind a lot, right? I think you have to, if you want to pursue something and become good at something, it's critical. I think a lot of people want to become good at something and then they dream about the end destination, and then they forget that, you know, to get to the end destination is a lot of days of just shitty repetition of just doing the same thing in and out and becoming good at it. And then I think reality is most people don't want to do the daily boring stuff, right? They just want to get to the end station. And I think for some reason I'm just wired differently, where I feel like I enjoy more the nitty gritty, the daily stuff, the daily grind, than I actually enjoy the end destination. And then if I get somewhere close to an end destination, be it like winning something or ranking high in something, I kind of lose my passion, where I'm kind of like, okay, done. And then I just start pursuing something else. Yeah.
That's nice. Isn't that what people say? Like, is the main thing in life? Like, you have to enjoy the ride.
Yeah.
Like for me personally, I've always been playing professional soccer, and it's always been I need to be good at soccer. I need to be professional. That's my end station, you know.
Yeah.
And I've kind of like forgotten to enjoy the ride to getting there. And as I get older, it's like looking around me, all of these great people that are cheering for me and rooting for me. It's like, yeah, what you really think is the reward on the road. So that's nice. You mentioned you started coding early. You're kind of that computer geek. How did you start with coding at such an early age? That's kind of interesting.
Yeah. I think I started somewhat by coincidence. So I'm raised by a single mom. My mom decided to study IT. Back then, I feel like, because I'm old, I'm like 31 now. Back then, when there was like the Commodore 64, all of this stuff. She essentially did a class in uni. So she did a class in uni about coding, and then I think she was like, oh, I think my kid is going to like this. And then she introduced me to like the very basics of coding when I was probably like 9 or 10, something like that. And I think I got super into it because of the instant feedback loop. So like you're able to do something and then immediately something changes on the screen. So to me, when I was 9, 10, that was like changing the background color to red. And then I was like, holy shit, this is the future, right? And then that just kept me going, right? I just wanted to learn more. And really, it was just something I was pursuing for fun. Also back then, like internet barely existed. Again, I feel like a dinosaur saying this, but like there was no YouTube, there was no social media. We just had like images on a page, and it was kind of like, yeah, the good old days. So coding wasn't really a big thing, right? Like the internet was barely a big thing. But yeah, I started just doing coding for fun. And then I think I started showing it off to my friends that I had like this really cool website that was like red color, yellow font, Comic Sans, and saying, you know, this is super dope. And then I think a few of my friends in class got into it as well. And then I think we kind of like pushed each other, because basically every day would be like, we have school, we go home, we watch MacGyver, and then after MacGyver, we start making a web page that is like slightly cooler than your friends. And then when you go to school, we had like the computer lab. You would like run to the computer lab, you're trying to show off what you built, and then it's basically a flex of who had like the coolest thing. And by coolest thing, it's very basic, right? Because there was no cool things on the internet. It was literally like, do you have a box that is yellow versus do you have one that is like yellow and purple? And then that was super cool. But yeah, that was kind of how it started. And then I think I just kind of pursued it as like a side hobby, I guess. It was never kind of like a main thing I did in my teenage years. I think I mostly did like sports. And then this was kind of just always in the back, something I did for fun, but I never really told anyone just because it wasn't like a thing.
Yeah. You always been like competitive growing up. Like when you started coding, you wanted to like show this off to everyone around. Like, hey, I can also make this. I can make it better than you. Kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's cool. I heard an interview with Brian Armstrong, the founder of Coinbase. He was like, founders either have ADHD or they have autism. And then I feel like I can kind of...
What do you feel like?
I find I can group you in a category here. So that's...
early autism signs, nice. I guess.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
That's cool. Yeah. So going off with coding and then kind of a founder perspective, how did you start up your founder journey and your startup journey? That's an interesting one.
Yeah, I think my first business and kind of my journey into entrepreneurship somewhat happened by chance, but then also I think the common pattern is, again, competition. As you kind of heard, I did a lot of sports. I did all of these things. I think in high school, I decided to change it up. So I was like, okay, I feel like I've gotten really good at like getting good in different types of sports. And then I think back then there was kind of like this, not like debate, because it's not like it was a huge thing, but I feel like there was this kind of tension in the class of like, is Sebastian really dumb or is he really smart? And I think there was a lot of debate going on of being like, is he going to be like a super failure that is just super dumb, or are you actually like somewhat kind of smart? And I think at that point I was like, okay, I want to try to prove to people that I actually am smart. And also I was kind of wondering if I am actually smart or if I am dumb. So it was kind of a challenge to prove whether or not I was actually smart to myself as well. But either way, kind of like what happened in high school is then I was like, okay, I'm going to stop doing sports. And then I'm going to use kind of like my energy and obsessional energy to focus on school. And then I think that kind of led me into IB. So I did IB in high school for my second and third year, which in the US is called AP levels. And then I managed to get into IB, pass the interview, all of these things, and then did IB and finished there. And I think that was kind of like the first step into business, which was, okay, can I be good at anything else besides sports? And then I proved I can kind of do the same thing in school as well. And then I think my issue with school was kind of the grading system. So I started getting frustrated by this concept of a roof or like a minimum maximum grade, which is really when you bucket in and grade people on a scale from, F to A or 1 to 6, or in the case of IB, it's 1 to 7. To me, there had to be a winner, right? There is always one essay that is better than the other, or there's one answer that is better than the other, but then you would see them get the same grade. And I don't know why, it's probably like something messed up in my personality or some disorder, but I had this issue with like something getting ranked the same when it's obviously not the same. So one answer is better, right? So it should be getting grade above the other one, or like something that would grade it differently. But then very often you would find two people getting the same grade. And let's say they get the best grade, like they get an A or they get a 7. But then one was obviously better, right? But then now they're kind of grouped, when you look back at it, they're kind of grouped in the same bucket, which is you both got an A, but then one was better. So I got frustrated with that. And the thing that I discovered is like, what's the competition that you can do in life that basically has no roof, where no matter kind of like how good you get, there's always somebody better than you. And then if you're kind of the best in your niche, you can just always expand the niche. So what I mean by that is like you might be the best football player in Norway, right? But then big whoop, that's 5 million people. Like India has 100 million, right? Like you're no one. So you can always expand kind of the scope of like, well, are you the best in Scandinavia? Are you the best in the Nordics? Well, are you the best in Europe? Are you the best in the world? And then very quickly you'll get humbled, right? Because you'll realize that, yeah, I mean, you might be the best player in Norway, but again, Norway is the size of half of New York City, right? So it's literally you're not really that good, or you should be that good, is one way of putting it. So I figured business is the one ultimate battle of competition where kind of no matter how hard I try, I'm always going to kind of suck and I can always learn. And I'm never going to be the best. And I think it's a curse and a blessing, because the curse is I've kept going for like 13 years because it's kind of like a glitch where my personality is always trying to be the best and I keep trying to get better. But then because there is no best and there is no better, then you kind of just catch me in a loop where I keep going for 13 years because I'm trying to do that. And then I'll probably keep doing it till I die, and then I'll still not be the best and I'll still not be, exceptionally great at what I do, but hopefully better.
That's fascinating. And like when you found out like the startup life and you wanted to pursue things there, what were like how did you find your way or your idea? Was there anything in particular like, oh, I really need to build this. This is missing. We need to build something around this.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the first startup I made, right, which is the kind of first startup I made was a company called TechPeer. It was when I was 18. So basically, I just turned 18. I started the company, which is a tech company. And I think kind of like very briefly there, it was effectively a recruiting algorithm using machine learning to try to reduce bias in hiring. This was 13 years ago.
No AI back then.
Yeah, I was going to say the machine learning algorithm did not exist. It was a hypothetical concept in academia. And the cost of doing a very, very basic algorithm on machine learning would be in the range of like $100K just to train. And I think now the equivalent would be like, you can probably train the same model in ChatGPT. Like, to put it, it's such a different world, right? So it was very much ahead of its time, and timing is important in business. And we were definitely not timing the market correctly. But we started doing that. That happened when I was 18. I made the business in Norway, and then we got funded the same year. So we ended up getting VC funded by a company in Silicon Valley, which is called 500 Startups. 500 Startups back then is basically kind of the rivalry of like the accelerator to YC. So back then I would say YC and 500 Startups were kind of the two best ranked accelerators in the world. And we went through a process there of like 2,000 applicants, 200 people made it to an interview, and then they select 20. And then all of a sudden, I go from just like being this rando kid to being like 18. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I do think I'm the youngest in Scandinavia to get venture backed by like a professional fund. And maybe even to this date. Let's see if I've held it on for like 10 years.
That's incredible.
Yeah, so I did that, and then very quickly we just moved the business to Silicon Valley, where I've never been before. And it was basically a Norwegian 18-year-old kid leaving everything and then moving to Silicon Valley, which is, spoiler alert, a very big culture shock.
Yeah. How was the culture there? How was like you as a Norwegian 18-year-old getting there by yourself or with friends, or how did it come about?
Yeah, so I had two co-founders. I feel like the honest answer, and we can kind of agree on this, if I haven't spoken to them in a couple of years, but I feel like they were kind of just two random people I picked up. It was kind of just like something I wanted to do, but then I read that you needed like co-founders. And then I picked up this guy who just like drew sketches, and then I was like, you're going to be the designer. And then this other guy who was just like fairly like adult for his age. Like he was like grown up. I was like, that guy can probably manage money. And then I remember, because like you get investment, right? And then you're like this 18-year-old kid from Norway with a single mom, and all of a sudden you're running a business and you have like a couple of million in your bank account, and you're like, holy shit. Like I think the max I've ever seen was like $2,000 or something, right? And then you're like, I am not made for like managing this amount of money, but then also you raise the money, so you're also trying to like pretend you're like, yeah, I'm destined for this. Do you know what I mean?
Suddenly VCs are throwing money at you. That's
So I got this other guy who was in my mind like responsible and could basically manage that and all of kind of like the business aspects and legalities, and then I just took on the role of kind of like the CEO and managed the idea. But yeah, Silicon Valley was crazy different, right? I think Norway is a culture led by a lot of mediocrity, is how I would honestly describe Norway. It's very easy to be lazy in Norway, and there's not a lot of competition, and I don't think a lot of people are very ambitious. And then I think because I've always been like competitive, I think that translates well into kind of ambition in many ways. But I do think coming to Silicon Valley, because Silicon Valley has a lot of immigration, right? So I think it's kind of like applying and getting into like Harvard or something like this, where you might be the best in your class, but then now you're meeting all of the people across all of the world who are also the best in their class. And then it's time to get a reality check on like, how good are you really, right? And I think Silicon Valley was that for me, which is I kind of excelled up until that point, and then you go there and then you just get, I mean, I think I did well. I grinded, but there's a lot of really, really brilliant and smart people there, and they're very good at what they do. Like, I think to give you kind of an idea, we had a summer intern, which was basically this kid who was, I think, 12. So it's a 12-year-old guy doing a summer internship in a startup, and he's an iOS developer, and he coded the entire app for the entire company over a summer. And that was the guy, like, and he lived in Silicon Valley. So his parents were like Silicon Valley people, and he was raised there. And then I think if you check the stats, like the public schools in Silicon Valley rank like the best in the US because like they're so good in academia. And then the guy was also like special privilege program, or not like special privilege, but he ranked like top in physics in the US and everything else. And then I was like, holy shit, this 13-year-old guy is like so much smarter than me. And the guy would like live at the office, right? So it's also like he does the summer internship and he stays 18 hours like at the office, and then he goes sleep. Like he sleeps in a room on like an air mattress, and then he wakes up, and then that's what he does for 40 days. And then he's like, well, I'm back to school. And then you're like, holy shit, these people are next level, right? It's not something we would commonly see in Norway, I think.
Yeah, that's like a huge difference from what we see in Norway.
Yeah.
And it had to be like really motivating in Silicon Valley, seeing all of these startups, seeing all of the grind. Like, how do you think that shaped you, and did it motivate you even more to build things? And
Yeah, I think so. I think, again, because people there were working so hard all the time. And it was kind of the first time where I felt like I had competition on people that were working as hard as me. I think I was very used to being like, okay, I'm just going to outgrind everyone else. And again, I think like a common, or it sounds weird, but like a common misconception is that I'm very smart. It sounds kind of cocky, but what I mean by that is like, I think a lot of people think I'm like gifted or something, but I do think I'm just very average, but then I'm just so stubborn. And then I just work and put in so much more hours than anybody else that, you know, when you put somebody that's extremely average, but you give them a lot of hours to be very stubborn, I think they can outperform people that are lazy but gifted, right? And I think I'm that guy. I think I'm just very average but very stubborn, and then I just keep going, and then over time I get better at things. And I think in Silicon Valley, people were just constantly grinding, constantly working hard. And I think also the lack of ambition and that people dare to dream big is something I didn't have before Silicon Valley. Like there's a lot of people that are pursuing kind of their life's work, and I don't think that's ever even been a topic in Norway, right? Which is like, what is your life's work going to be? Like, what's the number one thing you want to have a big impact on, or you want to create? And then people ask that as a literal casual question, you know? And then you're like, holy shit, that's super deep. And then, yeah. But yeah, it was defining for me, I think, for sure.
I feel like that also describes Spring and First. Like, the team around us are like grinding every day, 24/7. And it's like, nothing comes easy. And we have actually grown this company to raise almost $500 million on Spring, and now going on to First. It's like, we are always in this constant grind, and we're almost forgetting what we have actually accomplished. And like 200,000 investors are using Spring today. And it's kind of amazing to like take a step back and holy shit, we are actually doing things good here.
Yeah. I don't think we talk about it at all, right? In the company. I think that's kind of like the one, I guess, negative thing about the company is we don't celebrate wins, or I think we define wins as not this. So I think even like when we've done like $400 million in 4 years, we're like, well, when we get a win, we'll celebrate. So I think we're also just I think it's a company with high ambition, right? And then I think a lot of us feel like if we wanted to just create a company that's just normally successful and have an easy life, we would just create like an e-commerce store, do something like super plain and boring. But I think I think everyone in the company needs like something that's extremely challenging to work on in order to get motivation. And I think that's probably what motivates everyone in the company more than money, right? And then money is also a nice benefit, but far from the main priority, I think.
I feel like we're the meme, like 400 million raised, celebrate, and then back to work, back to grind. Yeah. And for all the like founders out there, the young founders, what's like the number one thing you would give them as advice?
I think the number one advice would be, I mean, I can only like say at least what I think would be the most useful for me to know. And I think it's something I've been thinking about quite a lot lately, which is probably just following your intuition more and trusting yourself. And that's, I mean, it sounds like I'm creating a Buddhism book or something, but really what I mean is like, you have to understand that if you are in a position where you've created a company and the company is successful, then kind of statistically you're doing something that's not normal, right? You're outside this range of average. So what I mean by average is literally just what normal people do. The average is where the mean is, right? So if you're doing something that most people don't do, then you should be very skeptical about the feedback from the people that don't do what you do, right? You should not really take feedback or advice, I think, from people that have not achieved what you have achieved or more. And I think that would be my feedback. It's very easy to get tricked into thinking that people have the credibility to give advice. So like an example would be VCs. I think a lot of the worst advice I've ever gotten is from VCs. They're typically in the cohort of like, I mean, no hate to the VCs and our VCs. I love the majority of them. But it is, if you look at their LinkedIn or kind of their past experience, very few are actually builders, right? They've never really built a company. So they're very good at textbook how to build a business. And they've watched how to build a business. But I think, I don't know who like had the quote, if it's like LeBron or something, but it's kind of like his quote, and I'm kind of paraphrasing, but it's like, there's a big difference between sitting like courtside and watch every single Lakers game and then thinking you know how to play like the Lakers versus actually playing for the Lakers, right? So you could have front row seats to watching the Lakers play every single game, but then you're still not playing for the Lakers. Like there's a huge difference, right? And I think that kind of counts here, which is be very skeptical about who you take advice from and then trust your intuition a lot more, because I think the people who are in the role of being a founder or being a CEO, and if people have backed you with like millions of dollars in this, it's a sign of trust and that people trust you specifically to kind of solve the problem that you've pitched that you're going to solve. And then you should trust yourself enough to be able to do that because they've trusted you. So it means people do trust you to do it, right? So now you just have to trust yourself, which means you're kind of chosen for a reason, and then trust your opinions for that reason. Don't trust what random people tell you to, because they very often don't know anything, and giving advice is very easy.
That's beautiful. And yeah, to take it back, like you sat in Silicon Valley, the youngest Scandinavian to ever get VC funding. How did the startup shape? How did it like end, or what's like the biggest learnings you had from that journey?
From the startup in Silicon Valley?
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. I think probably what I learned the most is the concept of like hustle. So what I mean by that is, I think in 500 startups, you got to work with like 19 other companies that was also like hand selected from all over the world, right? So you're working next to people that are like really, really smart, really good at creating businesses. And then you're also getting coaching and all of this from 500 startups, and we would have incredibly talented people that came and did like speeches for us. We had like the concept of like fireside chats, which is like once a week, like a billionaire founder from Silicon Valley would come in, and then everything is off record. You couldn't record anything, and then they just sit for an hour and talk, and you can ask them about like anything. And that's like people from like the CEO of Dropbox, all of these companies back in the day who were huge. And I think what I learned is basically the things from those conversations. I feel like I learned more about just like being there and the stuff around it, rather than I learned more from that than actually the business itself, I feel like, right? Then yeah, the business was fun. I mean, I think ultimately it didn't work out, right? So I think there also was this learning of being too early, having a good idea, but being way too early in the market. And then it doesn't really matter how good the idea is. And then I think another key takeaway was also to not allow people's opinion or kind of like what they think about you affect you too much. Again, in how you make the business. And I think the equivalent is for us, I think when I was there, we had like the biggest national newspaper in Norway. They flew down because they wanted to do like a article on us. And the article was basically something along the lines of like, is he the next Zuckerberg of Norway, right?
Wow.
And then at the time I was like, oh, this is cool. But then also I started getting like messages at home, which is like, holy shit, a lot of people are actually like following you now. Like people want to know if this is actually going to work. And then I think because I was 18 at the time, and then like everybody was like, holy shit, he's the youngest to ever raise VC money. Holy shit, is he the new Zuckerberg? And then, you know, the national paper here was like writing it up and taking pictures, flying down. And then I think I felt so much pressure that I kind of drowned in the pressure, I think. Like, I think I was too young to deal with that pressure, and the pressure affected how I ran the business for sure. So I think kind of like some learnings is, I think I let external factors trigger me too much. Like I put too much emphasis on like things I couldn't control and people on the outside. And then on the positive side, I think what I got from being in Silicon Valley and my first business is I got to watch what it is to work hard in order to get something, right? Like I think most people in a startup, they say they work hard, but then, you know, if you come to Silicon Valley, you realize that the people who are really trying to build a successful business, they're working really hard. And what I mean by that is they're just like very, very stubborn, right? Which is when they're starting out and they have 0 customers, then they'll just grind and do manual stuff for 18 hours every single day. And what I mean by that is I think now a lot of people are a bit more lazy and they look for like automation tools or something to like solve how do we go from 0 customers to 10. But then in my opinion, based on like every successful startup I've seen, the answer is always just you have to do so much dirty work, which means like you have to manually send emails to like 500 companies. You have to like call them on the phone. And then these tactics change as you scale. But the beginning, at least to me, feels like it's just so much hard work and you just have to be ready to like do really manual work that's not fun for a long period of time in order to try to make it right. And I think that's something I learned because I witnessed so many startups next to me just doing that every day.
Yeah, that's nice, and it's cool to see you how you're building and designing first now. Like on X, you're like locked in, and I like this quote you have, like improving it 1% each day, you know, and like really laser focused on what you can actually improve and do to make it better. That's great. And yeah, you've had kind of a few startups now. So after the Silicon Valley, you ended up doing another startup.
Yeah, so I've done a combination of things, right? I think first is kind of like my third startup, and then I've also been head of growth, VP of growth, CMO at 3 different scale-ups. So I've done kind of like 3 of my own ventures, and then 3 typically kind of coming in very early, like employee 10, and then I get assigned to like build a marketing team or build the growth team and scale the business. So typically I come in at like a stage where the company has some shape or form of kind of like product market fit and they have some customers, but then they're really trying to go from, let's say like 100K MRR to like 10 million, right? And it's a completely different beast. So I've done that for 3 other startups. But yeah, my second kind of venture that I created myself was the company called Ebby, which is very similar in the US to DoorDash. We did that in Norway. I think at one point we were bigger than Foodora, which was kind of fun because back then Foodora was, I think, like 40, 50 people. We were 3. And then also because we know now, looking back, we've talked to some of the guys in Foodora at the time, and then we found out that like Ebby was like a big thing in their office, and they were thinking about like how to beat us and all of this. The difference is they're backed by Rocket Internet, which is like multi-billion-dollar VC fund that just deploys money. So their strategy was basically we can just lose money infinitely as long as we win long term. They're fine with losing money for 10 years. And then we were 3 dudes who were like, we're not fine with losing money for 10 years. We had no funding. Because back then in Norway as well, there was no VC funding, right? The only way to get funded is you had to find basically a rich dude from real estate, and then you had to convince them to put some money into tech because it's like hip and young, and they should like diverse their portfolio a little bit. And that's how you got VC funded in Norway, truly. And now it's changed. So back then it was kind of hard because I came from Silicon Valley, and then we quickly scaled Ebby, but it's kind of like one of those exponential businesses where you need a unit of scale to work. And I think like scaling and losing money before you earn money is very common in the US and is how they build startups. In Norway, that was not how you build a startup. So it's one of those ventures where I think like if we would have created it today, we probably would have been crazy successful and been able to like outscale Volt, outscale Foodora, all of this. But then, yeah, again, bad timing.
That's interesting, and kind of all of these ventures and all this kind of entrepreneurship leaded up to building Spring. Like, and it's interesting to hear from you. Like, how did that come all about? Like, what did you see in back then it called pre-sale, but what did you see in pre-sale and Spring that wanted to like really dive into Web3 and to build something there?
Yeah, I think. Presale and Spring was kind of the startup that happened by coincidence. We didn't really create it to be a startup. So what I mean by that is sometimes you have like, you go in with a mindset of like, I want to create a startup. And then you have to find a problem. Spring kind of didn't happen that way. It kind of just came to us, and then we're like, holy shit, did we make a business? And then we're like, yeah, I think we made a business. So Spring kind of came about from, I mean, I got into crypto and blockchain in like 2017, I think, by reading a Reddit post about Ethereum. So again, you have to trace it back to like, I'm a developer. I've been coding since I was 10. And then all of a sudden I read this pitch, which was kind of like, there is this thing called a blockchain. The perks of the blockchain is immutability, and it's 24/7 uptime. And I was like, holy shit, that's super attractive. Like, it's the equivalent of a car geek seeing a Lamborghini or something, I guess. Like, it's like nice. the dream, right? So I got very hooked by that, and I was like, holy shit, like immutability is a lot of fun to work with as a developer. And then I think like 24/7 uptime is, if you've managed like servers before or something like that, the ability to just like deploy something and never have to worry about it going down. And infinite scaling in many ways, like it doesn't really care if you have 100,000 users or 1 million, is very fun to play with, right? So that's how I got into Ethereum. I never really cared about Bitcoin. I remember even when I was 18, so in Silicon Valley, we had somebody in our batch that was doing Bitcoin. And I swear to God, I just thought it was a joke. I thought it was like, really? It was so early as well. Because back then, so this was 13 years ago, right? Bitcoin was, I think, I remember we had a competition at 500 startups, and the winner got 1 Bitcoin. And it was like the best pitch or something as a fun. And I think the equivalent of 1 Bitcoin at the time was like $30 or something. And then I remember because it's my co-founder who got the 1 Bitcoin.
Oh, really?
And I literally think he just threw away the private key. I think like that was just haha, fun toy money, and then straight in the trash. And I think, yeah, Bitcoin never caught my attention because I didn't really care about financial stuff. Like I was never too focused on kind of just the financial industry, stuff like that. But Ethereum did caught my eye. So going back to like how is all of this connected to Spring, I think I got my co-founders kind of into crypto by talking about Ethereum a lot. And then I think very rarely, if ever, have I ever said like, oh, you should put your money into something. And then I think Ethereum was the first time I said, oh, if you have some extra money, let's put some money here. Because I don't really gamble. I don't really do any of those things. And then I think my friends were like, holy shit, did Sebastian really say we should put money into something? And then I think they were like, if Sebastian says we should put money into something and he never says we should put money into something, we should probably put money into this. And then they put money into it, and then it started going well for Ethereum. And then I think they got more interested because all of a sudden they were like, holy shit, we actually made money on this stuff. And then that's basically the story of like how Milad got into all of this and stuff like this. But yeah, Spring came because we were coding on different things that we thought were interesting on chain. So at the time I was really working on something that's more similar to actually like Nansen or Dune. And I think the funny part is both of those companies are Norwegian. And I was also kind of doing the same thing. So I guess surely there's something like we see something through the same lens of like data analytics and stuff like this. But I was basically working on just a fun side project really for myself to make blockchains more accessible. And then Thomas started working on this other project, which was more about like managing investments and accounting and stuff like this. And then really by the time, because the concept of like investment communities and all of this came up and making early stage investments, we kind of realized we could combine our tools. So one was kind of like doing management and tracking, which was the accounting part. And then all of my code was like looking on chain, validating things on chain, finding stuff on chain, which is basically kind of reconciliation of funds, right? So we were like, okay, what happens if we merge these two side projects into one project? And then we did that, and then that's kind of the beginning of Spring as a tool, right? And then we started pitching the tool to investment groups. And then the first pitch was for the individual investors, so the people who were investing into investment groups, for them to keep track of things. And then I think we got approached fairly quickly by the people who were managing the groups, and kind of their pitch was like, hey guys, you've solved this problem, it's nice, but we basically have the same problem, but like with a multiplier of like 500, right? Because we have to manage these 500 people. So they're like, if you can just modify or change the tool to be it for us, then we'll pay you money for it. And then we're like, okay, that sounds good. We'll modify the tool and then you pay us money for it. And then I think the first month of Spring being released, I think we earned like $60K in our first month, right? Which, and again, I don't think we even had it created a business yet. It was literally just like, holy shit, what the hell? And then we're like, oh, okay, well, I guess we're doing a startup again. And then people were working at different startups. And then we were like, okay, I guess we have to quit our jobs. And then this is our new startup. But it was not intentional at all. It was kind of just, I don't want to say random, but it kind of feels random.
It's really cool to see how you guys combined your passions and it all came together to this like really unique startup, and how you can actually solve things for so many people. That's great. So how has it been like building Spring? Spring has been around for like 4 years now, and you've been the CEO. And what's like the biggest takeaways, the biggest learnings from building in Web3? Because now you have the experience in Web2 and you have the experience in Web3. So, yeah.
Is there anything specifically you want to know? Like what do you mean? Is it Web3 learnings or is it just like professional learnings?
Yeah. The difference between like Web2 and Web3 and the learnings there. How
they're different?
Yeah.
I feel like if I'm going to be very blunt and very honest, Web3 feels a little bit like kindergarten. Is my honest take, which is it has been quite immature in the sense of the space, which is, I think, Web 2 or just everything besides Web 3 has a lot of expertise and experience built over years, right? Like there's people who have done their profession for 20 years, for 30 years. There's been countless of kind of experiments that identify why you should do something in this way, what converts the best. And in Web3, that seemed to just be non-existent. And I think Web3, because it got kind of this boom and fame, attracted a lot of first-time founders. And I think if you're a more seasoned founder, it's very obvious that there's a lot of first-time founders in blockchain and in crypto in general, which means there's a lot of people with a lot of money that don't know how to spend that money properly, and they don't really know in my opinion, how to build a business, right? Like the number one goal of a business is to earn money. And then you can choose to not like it or you can like it. But the reality is you build a business, it's built on capitalism. The goal of a business is to make money. The more money, the better. And a lot of these people thought the metric is raise the most amount of money, spend most of that money, and then leave and party. So I think that's the biggest difference is I think as a space, it started off very immature. There's a lot of people who haven't built teams, haven't scaled, stuff like that. And I think that was quite obvious. But then again, as long as you're able to be a good storyteller and communicate well, I think you're going to be able to raise money. Like a lot of the art of raising money comes down to storytelling, right? And being able to communicate and having people believe in you and the vision that you have. And I think there is a little bit of a correlation between being a good storyteller and having success in business, but it's not everything, right? You need to also be very good at building and solving a problem that is worthy of solving, and then solving that in a way where people are willing to pay you money for it. And I think crypto has been lacking that a little bit. We have some examples of it, right? And then I think, yeah, for Spring, we have kind of been like the quiet horse in the back, where we probably have not had enough people talking about Spring, but we've had enough people paying us money. So I'm very grateful for that, and to have built a business that actually, can live and survive and make decent income. So I feel like we solved that, and then now I'm very excited about First as well. I think that's going to be even crazier, right?
It's cool that you touch upon like the journey of Spring and building up to First. So let's just double click on why we're now building First and your view on like what we're solving with First, because with the first private market DEX that actually tokenizes these safts and make them tradable. So it's interesting to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think for me, the DEX is one thing, but the DEX itself is not First, right? The DEX is one of the things that First does and delivers on because we have to. Like, I think at the core of First is kind of the protocol concept, right? Which is we've solved the problem, which is things are illiquid, and then we've solved how do we make something that is illiquid into something that is liquid, right? So if you think about it, it's the private market that we're focusing on now. And then the question is, how do you turn something that is an illiquid one-time investment, which is, in our case, what we've started with is SAFT agreements. And then how do you turn that into something that is highly liquid, something you can actually trade? And our answer to that is mirror tokens, right? And then I think what makes First exciting is, we've solved the problem of illiquidity. And we've solved it in a way where I think it's an incredible solution to the problem, right? I think mirror tokens is how we propose solving it. The mirror token is then backed by the token delivery commitment. And I think people will be able to read and learn more about how this actually works in a short bit. We're working on kind of getting the white papers and the documentation and then all of this out. But effectively, the way we solve mirror tokens is that it's backed by the token delivery commitment, which is the commodity forward contract, which for the people who are very nerdy and very into this means that the paper that the mirror token trades on is not actually security. It's not a synthetic trade. It's not a derivative trade, but it's actually a commodity trade, which if you're in the US means that it's commodity trading and it's not security trading. And then more specifically, it's designed to be a commodity forward, which means it's an agreement that's already assigned and you're trading tokens. And as part of the contract, you're trading tokens that's coming in the future. And yeah, I think I could talk about that for like hours, but I think it's super exciting what we're making. I'm excited for people to start learning more about the tech and the stuff behind it. And then I think kind of the easiest way to digest it is through the DEX, right? So I think people have the opportunity to go to the DEX and actually trade all of the mirror tokens that exist. And then the job of the DEX is basically to be the home of the mirror tokens, right? So every mirror token that we create and that the protocol creates will be trading on the DEX. And then, yeah,
that's nice, and it's really interesting to hear all of these technicalities. But when you're designing First, you're making it so easy for people to to use. And like as you mentioned, the storytelling behind what you're building. It's cool to hear your thoughts on, like, because you have designed the whole app now and iterating each day, making it 1% better each day. So what are your like thoughts on making it better each day? How do you improve the app? What's the thought process behind that?
Yeah, I think the thought process and the approach now we have for building the decks is somewhat easy. And then because it's easy, most things that are easy is also quite hard. I think we're focusing on simplicity and really communicating one thing and doing that one thing well. So I think now, again, you'll see this trend in the industry where everybody's trying to make an everything app. But to me, everything is kind of like Windows or like an Android phone, where most people don't want Windows and most people don't want an Android phone, if I'm going to be very honest, right? I think it's hard to understand what something does when it does everything. And it's hard for the product to educate the user on what it wants to do when it does many things. So I think with the DEX, we're really focused on just doing one thing, which is we allow the trading of mirror tokens, right? That's the only thing the app will do, and the only thing it will ever do is it should be as easy as humanly possible to trade mirror tokens and allow you to understand the concept of it and then buy illiquid tokens that are now liquid. So that's kind of the only obsession. And then I think we're very strict about not allowing anything else into the app that distracts from that mission. So we're never going to be a trading app that allows you to buy Bitcoin. We're never going to be anything of that. We're never going to be adding things that shouldn't be in the app because it's funny or any of those other crazy reasons. So we strive to reduce complexity because we want you to associate us with one thing, right? And I think like you have that in the best brands, which is I think like Volvo, you think safety, all of these things, right? And how do you get there? Well, you get there by doing like one thing very well and then drilling that into the heads of the people who are using the product over time. So I think that's our strategy on kind of like the branding and how to get people to understand mirror tokens. And then for the product and how we design it, the product is kind of striving to be in the middle of where we try to have a product that's as easy to use as humanly possible. So we try to reduce friction as much as possible. But then I think from my own experience and seeing other products, if you just make a product that's very easy to use, it's also very boring. So you need to kind of hit two measurements, right? You need an app that's incredibly easy to use, but also is engaging, which means that you need to first strive to take down the app to kind of the minimum amount of clicks and components and everything else, but then you need to elevate that with an experience that feels enjoyable or is a pleasure to use. And I think those things is what elevates the app into something that people enjoy using. And I think it's a lot more challenging than it sounds. And I'm trying to kind of share my thought process and how I'm doing that with the app now on X. And I think the mentality I have, again, is kind of the 1% better every single day. And then again, because I'm so stubborn, I'll be here plenty more days. So then I know if I just keep doing 1% better every day, then I'm going to outlive everyone else and then we'll have the best app in crypto. And then that's the goal.
That's amazing. And I feel like that's also what's missing in Web3 now. Like, we have all of these blockchains, rails, everybody's building on, but we don't have these apps that everyone uses, you know, and to make those as simple and easy to use as possible. And that's where I also see like the lack of adoption. Like everyday people cannot use crypto because it's so complex, you know.
Yeah.
But logging into first with your email is super easy, and then you see like how we can make it so everyone can be a part of this and take part of it. It's quite unique.
Yeah, I think we deploy a different strategy. We also did this with Spring, right? Where I think our team obsesses over solving the most difficult problem first. And then once we've solved that, we build backwards. And I think most startups work in the opposite direction where they try to do hype and stuff first, and then they try to solve the hardest problems. I think the trick, or like why that's not a good thing, is if you think about a funnel. So like, let's say you're a project that has a lot of people that are interested in the stuff that you've been making, and then you bring them in. So like you have launch date, you have, let's say 100,000 people or 1 million people that are very excited to use your product. what's going to happen if you don't have retention is people are just going to come in, they're going to use it once, and then they disappear, right? And then you've essentially spent $1 million on marketing, and then you have nobody that's using the product. And the chance of getting somebody that's used a product they didn't like to then come back is super costly and very rare to happen, right? So I think the way we've structured and built our product in the past, how we built Spring, and how also we're kind of building first, is we try to solve retention first. So the way we do it is we have more of a quiet launch, and we bring in a smaller cohort of users, and then we track our metrics, right? So we're seeing if people are falling off. Where are they falling off? Are they actually getting to the place where they can sign up? If they've signed up, are they actually depositing money? If they're depositing money, are they actually doing their first trade? If they're doing their first trade, are they doing their second trade? And then we study that, and we see where we kind of notice the drop off. And then we work extremely hard to improve that point, right? And then I think once we feel comfortable that we have like a core loop that is quite strong and that retains a lot of people, then we start wanting to bring more people in, because then, again, we don't have to have people that come in once, don't like the product, and then have to convince them back. But we're going to keep a lot more users than a company that has no retention but is good at marketing, right? Like, again, if the average retention rate on those products is 2%, well, 2% 1 million is very little, right? And then if you think about growing through retention, then if those same people come back, you don't need to touch 1 million people. You can just touch 100,000 people and you won, or 200,000 people. So
that's nice, and you have a lot of experience with building startups and entrepreneurship. Where do you see like first in 1 year from now? What's like what motivates you every day to build first, and where do you see it in a few years?
Good question. 1 year in, depends on market conditions, I would say. I think there's two paths. I think kind of no matter what, we're in a place where we enjoy being industry first. So what I mean by that is we like to create our own industry and our own genre. And we did that with Spring, and we're doing that again with First. I mean, First is the first of its kind. And we've kind of invented the industry. So I think in a year from now, we're in a space where hopefully a lot more people in crypto know about the concept of mirror tokens and are actively using that as an asset class to invest in. I still think it's going to be the second biggest asset class after just buying spot. So I think hopefully in a year, people have started to notice that. And then if things go very well, hopefully the biggest volume on crypto is spot trading, mirror token trading, and then whatever is third, I don't really care about. So
that's amazing, and truly motivating to help all of these people. And we see like we just launched a month ago with First, and all the people we're helping with getting better prices, and that's great. Any final things you wanna say to the audience?
Buy mirror tokens, read up on mirror tokens, read up on the white paper that is coming, join the Discord, have fun, and then
that's
enjoy
amazing.
the ride.
It's been a pleasure talking with you, getting to know you more. I feel like the listeners also have learned a lot about you as a founder, CEO. That's amazing, and I highly recommend, if you have not already, follow Sebastian on X. It's going to be in the descriptions, and let's go back to building.